Welcome to Cultivated Live for Thursday, November 14th. Had to double check that. My name is Jay Rosenthal. I'm the co-founder of Cultivated Media, the host of this program, which we call Cultivated Live. And since we launched almost exactly a year ago, our goal at Cultivated has been to be cannabis industry first, providing you with the most important, insightful, useful, and timely information every single day. We do that through our daily newsletter, which you can get at cultivated.news. That is called Cultivated Daily. We do that through this daily live stream, which is Cultivated Live. So please subscribe to our daily newsletter, follow us on LinkedIn, subscribe to us on YouTube to get all the info every single day. Today, I'm joined again by my co-founder and our editor-in-chief, Jeremy Burke. Hey, Jeremy.
Hey, Jay. Good to be here as always.
And smooshed between us is Mike Gorenstein, the CEO of Cronos Group. Mike, nice to see you.
Hey, good to see you guys again. Thanks for having me back.
It looks on this angle like you are sitting next to the single largest cup of coffee in the history of the world. Oh yeah, see, it's big.
It's definitely a large cup.
Life of a cannabis company CEO, I guess. The early mornings, the late nights, and the giant coffees. Mike, before we jump into all things Cronos, I just want to say that the spinach gummies on my street, the Toronto ones that are CBG and THC, are one of our go-tos. So I don't know who to thank for that. I'm doubting you're the formulary of that, but thank you for those. They are a hit on Margaretta Street in Toronto.
Awesome. I think you should. My favorite ones are the CBC ones. You should try those.
Well, I also like CBC here because it's like it says CBC. That's our national broadcaster, which is just fun and interesting to have weed with CBC in it. Because I often have weed and then listen to CBC, so it's all coming together. Mike, I also mentioned before we sort of went live that I think I saw you speak. In cannabis years or dog years, it's like a million years ago. It was like in the 20 teens, and you were speaking at some event in Toronto. Well, let's start there because you've been in this business for a long time, longer than most, with more longevity than most. Like you've actually been doing the thing.
Yeah. So I guess. This is year 9, coming up on 10. It's been a wild ride. It's been for quite a while. So I think we've seen kind of the ups and downs, the the wild cycles, but also it's grown a lot. I think people focus so much on what the stocks have done, right? I think that's where most of the buzz came in. But if you look from a industry perspective, a product perspective, just overall maturity, we've come a long way from the 2015 days when it used to be MJ Biz, and I think we connected a really MJ Biz probably 7 years ago.
A really long time ago, yes.
Yeah, MJ Biz used to be people trying to understand just how to successfully grow without using pesticides. What are these lights? Do they work? It's amazing how much things have changed.
It is, and I want to sort of, you talked when you first said ups and downs and wild cycles. Where are we in some of those ups and downs and wild cycles as it relates to Cronos? Is it where are you sleeping at night? Were there times where you weren't sleeping at night? Where are you in this sort of time horizon and ups and downs?
Yeah, look, I think one of the reasons I've probably been quieter is I've always had this. I think I have a view. I thought it was a pragmatic view, but maybe a scarier view when there's a rational exuberance. A little bit more muted. I try not to get too high or too low. So you can kind of, if you've watched this for a few years and kind of watched our strategy. I've had a lot of data, whether it's government affairs data, whether it's supply demand data, market data, where I've kind of expected things weren't going to be the smoothest sailing. So Cronos really prepared for that, right? I made sure people questioned are you doing anything? Why are you just sitting back or waiting? And, we were doing a lot of R&D. We were building up to make sure we had the right brands, the right products, and we did not blow through our cash. So we never took debt. At least in the last couple of years, we paid off all the debt we had. We have a great cash runway. We're not burning cash as a company. And we still have avenues for growth. So I sleep fine. I've never been great at sleeping at night, but I'm not staying awake because I'm nervous. But I think that, overall as an industry, a lot of people just are really fixated on U.S. regulations and when is the U.S. going to move. And I think it's really tough if you're in a position where you are you're basically relying on some rule change. You're relying on the Safe Banking Act. You're relying on rescheduling. You're relying on the States Act, or whatever this next thing is. It's really, really tough to do that, and I think we're back in a place like that where people are going to hang on every sort of tweet or interpret everything to see where things go. But fortunately, I would love for things to move and open up in the U.S. There's nothing higher on my wish list. But we're expanding, we're growing, we're taking share in Canada, we're taking share in Israel. We're growing in Germany and UK and Australia. We don't have enough product right now. We are doing a 70% capacity expansion at GrowCo. We just put 50 million US into that to grow it, because we hit #1 brand in Canada with spinach. And we would be selling a lot more if we had more flower, but we just keep tapping out. So I'm pretty happy with where we are. I wish we had more supply, trying to speed construction up as much as we can, but at least that part of it feels like the old days where we're in a shortage again.
Before we get into the irrational exuberance piece, Mike, looking at the US, could you talk a little bit about the Canadian market? Because there is an upcoming election in Canada. There was a review of the Canadian Cannabis Act. How are you thinking about the Canadian market, and where do you see the most growth there right now?
Yeah, so I'll give you a couple things, and stop me if this isn't interesting, because I will I'll go for hours on it.
We are as nerdy as you want to get. So.
Yeah, whatever lay it on us. Yeah.
All right, so starting off, just like a history of what's been going on in Canada. You started off, you had a ton of capital come in. People built up tons of facilities because people were being valued on this crazy idea of funded capacity. So it was like, right. It's not what are you producing? Do people want it? It's just how much could you grow? And since no one knew who could grow what, it was like, well, if you have the money, we're going to give you a higher multiple, so you're going to invest more. And it became this cycle where all these companies built tons of infrastructure that they couldn't really use. Getting to us, we were kind of looking at it as we should not go this crazy. I think we're able to buy product from other people for cheaper than we can produce it at some point. And that's because there'll be oversupply. Let's learn, let's figure out exactly how to make the best product. Let's carve out a niche, and then we can build up later once we have it figured out. So, you fast forward, we've kind of got to that point where those companies have worked through a lot of supply. A lot of the numbers you see when you're like, oh, there's so much inventory, it's not really good product. There is still a shortage of good product, and there's still, an excess of bad product. And a few things have happened. You've had a lot of those companies that had bad product or just weren't able to produce sustainably have started leaving the market because there's not more money coming in. So that's one, reducing supply. You had these things with lab test shopping where consumers don't have their own tests, and they tend to trust things as legal, but you had people kind of manipulating lab testing. And so someone had 24% THC product saying it was 35% THC product. That's for the most part stopped. And so when that came out of the market, you had a big gap for consumers who were still looking for high THC product, and there was much less available. So that sort of pulled things away to create more of a shortage. And then finally, as you know, the Canadian market, we don't have the best tax structure. It's not the most favorable. So there's other markets that open that are favorable. People need to rush to them. And Germany in April changed regulations to really open things up. The UK has been heating up. You've got Australia has been, taking more product. So people that had quality product in Canada started shipping abroad, which pulled more supply in the market. All of that sort of contributed to this, and I know most are shrinking in Canada, but we've been growing significantly. So we've seen it as a positive for us. It's not necessarily a growing market today. I think the reasons for that are different. I'm just talking about flower right now. Yeah. I think people forget that it's not purely the amount of supply in the legal market. If you don't have good product at the right price, and people are still going to find flower elsewhere, there will always be another source. So I think that may be part of why it's shrinking. But the demand signals we have are that there's plenty of runway in Canada. I think that you're seeing consolidation in other categories. Edibles, we're #1 edibles, #1 flower, but we see edible more share consolidation there. You're seeing consolidation even in vapes. And I think pre-rolls is kind of the next big frontier where it's still fragmented and you're seeing a lot of growth and innovation. But I think that US or Canada will be the biggest category going forward.
Yeah. You've seen it. I just want to hone in on Canada because I think there are instructive lessons in Canada that others are either not looking at or have sort of glossed over. But you've developed brands in Canada that actually have resonance when you start from zero and go to like creating brands over the course of 3, 4, 5 years. Like you can see what works and what doesn't in specific markets. And I'm thinking like, you have your spinach brand and sort of the offshoots of that or the sub brands of that, but also Lord Jones. You're wearing a sweatshirt before, a Lord Jones sweatshirt, but like there is other, you get the hat, but there are like, there are ways to build brand in a new market and in an expanding market that I think probably are good lessons for other markets that are evolving, whether that's, even new markets in the States where others are operating. Like there are ways to do it, but it may not be the traditional way that you would launch a soda, right? Necessarily. Like it takes a unique set of skills, talents, formulations, approaches to get to retailers, to talk to bud tenders, to get to customers in a really restrictive environment. And I would say you probably learned those hard lessons in Canada and are applying them elsewhere. Is that sort of part of the game plan?
Yeah, that definitely is. And I think, we have this concept, we talk about borderless products, right? You think about the strategy, I've never been shy about it. I've never had a goal of being number one market share in Canada. It was always using Canada as sort of a test ground to develop these products, figure out, what is it that would win. And then when other markets move and open up, we would enter those markets. And so part of that has been a very heavy R&D focus. And if you think about pros and cons, people don't think about, like, there are advantages of Canada over the US. And one of the big ones, like, think about 280E, right? If you're doing R&D in the US, it costs double, right? You're not deducting that. Whereas, you're not paying. The fact that it doesn't go into COGS really hurts. Whereas, in Canada, I think it's different, and you've got a much better opportunity to do that, given the size of scale you can build, given the access to capital you had early on. So I think that's a big advantage we had. We're also focused just on products, not on retail. So it's really been a hyper focus, and it's building from the products up. So I think a difference between cannabis and most CPG industries also is that it's very, very difficult in traditional CPG to get trial, whether that's because just getting shelf space allocation. When you think about your retailer, it's usually like, a shelf reset date, maybe once or twice a year. So getting on shelf is really difficult. And think about sodas. How often do you go somewhere and try a new soda?
Right.
How often do you try a new pack of gum? So cannabis, though, consumers are very willing to try something new. And you have to factor in, wait, this is a different game. People will try my product, but what's really hard, given how much people try new things, is how do I get them to repurchase? Mm-hmm. And you've got limited shots at it. So you have to prove you have a consistent product. It'll be the same thing every time, or someone doesn't want it. Consumers are like, okay, well then what's the point of rebuying it? I'll just try the new thing. And I think that's a key thing in building it is having a unique product, having something that hits a need a consumer has, that's differentiated, and making sure it's consistent. And if you can't do that, you're not going to build a brand. A brand is just a promise that the product is what it's supposed to be. And so when I think of like flower, for example, I don't even think of us as having a flower brand. And I've never thought of it as building a flower brand. We have the number one brand in flower for different reasons, because we have the genetics that we cultivate happen to be great. Each genetic is almost its own product or brand. And people come in, they're like, I want GMO cookies. It happens to be spinach GMO cookies, but that's a GMO cookies they want, but they want that strain. And if we stop selling GMO cookies, does someone switch to a different spinach flour or a different GMO cookies is a question. It's yeah.
Yeah.
How do you brought up international markets, Mike? How do you think about Germany right now, right? Because it's the next sort of exciting thing, but it's a very different model of legalization than Canada or US states have pursued. It's this kind of social club, non-retail model. Like, how do you plan around that, versus what you're doing in Canada when there's like marketing challenges?
It's funny because the attention Germany gets and the way that people talk about it versus what the actual market is so different.
Right.
I don't think in actual, like, my day-to-day working, I the only times I've ever talked about or heard about a social club is from, questions outside the company of like, hey, what are you doing about this, or how's it changing it? There's no recreational legalization in Germany. I don't see it coming anytime soon, and I don't think we need it. It is being sold through pharmacies. It is I can't stress how different it is than what anything looks like in North America. So you're really going through pharmacies, but the change really is just it's down scheduling. It's making it not a narcotic. And while that doesn't sound exciting, what's the biggest cannabis market, or most profitable cannabis market in the U.S. today? And I think Florida has historically been the best. Florida's medical, so you've got a huge population there. It is primarily a flower market, and I think you look at it as it's not going to be a dispensary. I mean, there's specialty cannabis shops, kind of like Israel, where like the dispensaries or pharmacies are like pharmacy, but it's a medical market. You have to remember that. So you're a little bit more limited in marketing and the format. The big difference between that and other markets to me, it's not that it's medical or adult use, it's that it's really just flower. And there aren't really vapes or edibles in the market today. So I see it as a huge runway for growth. I think that if you have good flower, you can win. We feel like with the same competitive set we did in Canada, if you look at who the players are. And so doing the same things we did to win, and that's a big reason for expanding, GrowCo. It's if you bred the right genetics, and unfortunately there's no quick fix. We've been doing this for years. Right genetics, right cultivation methodology, and then making sure you're only putting in good product, being patient, and I think it works well.
That's a longer term view than most, I think.
Yeah.
How you just described it, right? But it goes back to the first question, right? You've seen a lot of the ups and downs and the cycles that it goes through, and applying that to every next new market is helpful with both. I don't know, patience is not the right term, but like experience behind it, right? It's not like you're going to Germany because it's the next big thing. You're going to Germany because you've learned lessons in other places and applying those lessons to next new market.
Yeah, and I think I also am not worried. Like, I believe me, I've taken the beatings for like, you're not moving fast enough doing this, but I've also seen, from the different cannabis lives I've had, I've seen what happens when people try to go way too fast or, do things to try and hit numbers and say, look at what our share is. Like, you can say what you want, you can say what you want basically to the capital markets, but you're not gonna trick your consumers and patients if you don't have good product and you haven't done and built your brand right. And ultimately, if you don't win over consumers, you're never going to win over investors. And I think it's like the opposite approach a lot of the industry's taken. So you just have to have that long-term view, and that's what it comes down to. I mean, I think it's a
lot of those people you were on the stage with, I think it was 2016, 2017, are both not on stages anymore or on this show, but also their companies are no longer there too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're all rotated to AI at this point.
They've created, but they had to stop at crypto in between. So
yeah,
of course, they'll be back now.
Yeah, Mike, let's talk a little bit about the U.S. Right, the Matt Gaetz AG nomination is kind of the biggest headline right now. Cannabis markets being what they are, it's a bit of a casino, but there's a lot of use the term irrational exuberance right now. How are you thinking about the U.S. market as a CEO, and also, for audience, many of whom are retail investors coming in on X, like how should they be thinking about this stuff from your perspective as a cannabis CEO?
Yeah, so I'd say first thing is, the U.S. market, without question, I think will be long-term the most profitable cannabis market. And that's not me just, look at almost every industry. It may not be bigger than Europe, but just the profit pool and the way that businesses are run in the U.S., it would be very, very hard to say somewhere else is going to be more profitable, bottom line, in the U.S. Now, how that gets built out and what it looks like versus today, I think things are going to change quite a bit. I don't think it's going to be a vertically integrated model. I think it will look a lot like other industries. I think you're going to have retailers that win and are extremely successful. You're going to have brands that win and are extremely successful. You'll have ingredient suppliers that win and are extremely successful. I don't think you're going to have this, idea of vertical integration And part of the reason you have that today is just necessity. But if you think about it, the model of having like a cultivation facility in New York and Massachusetts and Wisconsin and Illinois, you're doing it today to build up, and maybe you're doing it to build up your retail, maybe you're doing it to build up your brand. But eventually, whether it's within the US or it's coming from other countries, there's going to be cheaper sources. It's just going to make sense. And if you think about competing with an illicit market, which again, we have to always come back, that's your real competitive set, it's there. The advantage we have as the legal industry is going to be innovation and scale, and you need a national supply chain. So I think that's all going to change. But it's very difficult to move ahead of the market and to try and get really, really creative and be like, oh, let's try and do all these little things to sort of trick the system. It's too competitive for that to work. We are certainly disciplined. We look at it, and there's we've made investments before, and I think you just have to be patient and understand where things are in the pecking order. And I hate saying this because my life is cannabis, right? Like for me, my top priorities in my life are it's like cannabis, cannabis, cannabis.
Really?
But like with Gates, and I hate seeing when people get overexcited about things, when people have too much to spare. You got to stay even keel. If you were to look at 100 hours of footage of everything that this guy has ever said, you can find like a couple clips of cannabis, and we can all highlight that as the cannabis industry. But remember, he's not coming in, and that's not his number one priority or his number two or number three priority. So I think when it comes up, certainly it will be positive. And I'm really encouraged by that. But I don't want to lose sight of the big picture of like, this isn't what he's not coming in to be AG for cannabis. I think cannabis will be something he is heavily influential on. It'll be on his list. But I don't know that it suddenly doubles the value of everyone in the industry overnight. And I think if it was someone who was negative, it wouldn't have the value of everyone overnight. But that's, it's how things work, I guess.
His biggest issue right now is that Senate Republicans, I think, hate his guts. That's not me saying it. That's stories today about people bad-mouthing him and actually the pick as well. So we will see how that goes over the next couple of weeks and months, I guess, too.
I think there's other ways he can get in. I think there's ways around that. Yeah. So I'm less hung up on that, on will he actually get confirmed. I think that is not the biggest issue to me. It's just what are the priorities going to be when he gets in. You can have, like, I actually think, I've always thought Trump is more pro-cannabis than Biden, just because I think Biden is not pro-cannabis at all. Yeah. I think Trump doesn't have that strong of a view. I think Trump's like, yeah, leave it to the states. Okay. But it's not the president's job to legalize it, right? It's really through Congress. So I think that descheduling would be amazing, but as far as timing, and this is something people should think about, is you can't expect it to happen next year, right? If that's where your expectation is, I think you're getting too excited, getting ahead of yourself. There's a lot of things that have to be done. The political process is not fast, and again, like the number one issue. How often do you hear cannabis come up? It's not the primary issue. I wish it was. And as an industry, we need to push to make sure that the benefits are seen. We get out there. And so I'm still optimistic. And I think that the idea that you need to be blue across the board for cannabis to work, I don't know. Listen, I love my friends in the West Coast, but I don't love the California market. That's not the market that I want to see, right? Massachusetts, not a great market. If you look at the states, there are red and purple states that have done very, very well. There's a world where I think that's the best outcome. Not a popular opinion, but the data supports it. So it's just being patient and also being targeted and focused and making sure that we as an industry do our job, because it's not going to get done without us.
Right. We're coming up on time here, Mike, but I just wanted to ask you one sort of off the cuff question. As a CEO in the cannabis industry, how often are you paying attention to the stock price of your company and of your competitors? Like, how do you think about that? Because I imagine it's not easy.
I mean, look, I might be in a different position here. One, the volatility for me, it used to be crazier, right? It used to be like we'd go up, we'd have hundreds of millions in market value change every day. But you just get used to it and don't really like. I mean, I know what the price is every day, but like I don't know what it is right now.
Right.
unless there's some like crazy thing and people start messaging me, I don't usually check it.
Yeah.
But yeah, like we also don't need to raise capital, and I know everyone says that, but we really, really don't need to raise capital. If we're looking to do an acquisition, we don't need to use shares. Cash is our currency, so I guess I'd be more concerned with what are exchange rates, where are things moving there. But yeah, if that's your focus and you get hung up on it, like I've always, we are where we are today from being contrarian and from not, if you follow what everyone else is saying, like you should have more info, and stock price is what other people think you're going to do or think, they know what you're worth. You have to have the confidence to know what you're doing is right, and you have the information that you should know. So I think that it's a real mistake and a trap to follow it every day, and you'd also probably go crazy.
We don't want that from you, Mike. So whatever you're doing seems to work because you've lasted a very long time. Mike, I want to thank you for joining us here today, and thank you, Jeremy, for also joining us. And we'll have you back in short order, Mike, to see how things are going. As always, it's been good fun. That's it for today's Cultivated Live. We'll be back tomorrow, 10 a.m. Eastern, not with a reporter on Reporter's Notebook from MJ Biz, but actually with the team from MJ Biz Con. We're going to be talking to them about how things are coming along for 3 weeks from now, where we'll be in Las Vegas. Mike Gorenstein, thanks for joining us, and we'll see everybody here tomorrow. Thanks, Jeremy.
Thanks.
Thanks, guys.